me?
You look radiant, my friend.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So yes, a little bit about me. I guess I was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta. Family is from Toronto though, so I know all you people out east too. I ended up that I got my PhD in behavioral neuroscience, which is technically a field of psychology, looking more at kind of how the brain produces our behavior and then also how our behavior can kind of adjust our brain. So spent many, many years doing that, potentially against my better judgment since I haven't been able to get a proper job in it. But I really did love literally just everything to do with kind of the brain and how it works.
Excuse me, Vicky, but you are a teacher. That's a proper job, honey.
But I don't have a full-time teaching job. So
okay,
yeah.
okay. Well, note to people on the call if you want to refer, Vicky.
Actually, I might be teaching for Lakehead University even next year.
Oh, exciting. That's closer to home for me. Yeah.
Yeah, not close to home for me. So yeah, when I finished my PhD, then I ended up having kind of a random set of odd jobs that all led towards kind of different fields of what I'm interested in. Some of them in the medical field, some of them more in the teaching world, some in science. Currently, what I do for my full-time job is work as a clinical research coordinator for the spine program at the University of Calgary and Foothills Hospital. So I pretty much get to run the research lives of 15 different spine surgeons, which is like herding cats. And then part-time, I do teach at one of the universities in Calgary. I used to teach at the actual University of Calgary, but lately I haven't been doing that. It's been at one of the smaller universities. I actually start again tomorrow. I'm teaching both psychology courses as well as neuroscience. And then I, of course, have my Vox side business, which I am both a practitioner as well as an associate in order to be able to build a team and sell the mostly just the compression socks is the reason to have the practitioner side. And then I do also have another business on the side as well, which is kind of in the marketing world to do with finance. That all doesn't leave very much time for me to have free time to do much with. So essentially the main thing that I do for kind of fun, I guess, is my sister and I have a bunch of horses. So I ride horses doing dressage, not the typical Western thing, but still. I definitely do love it. And it's really nice to kind of escape all the stress of all my jobs to go and just kind of play with my horses.
Love it.
There is a possibility you might either hear purring, which I can't help, or you might see cats coming in and out of the screen. One really likes to lay in front of my computer. So I apologize if suddenly I disappear and you get a cat instead. But pretty
people
much,
with pets live longer, Vicky. So
yep.
Good choice.
They definitely played a role in terms of how I felt better during some of my cancer treatments, because there was a lot of cuddling involved. So definitely animals make a huge difference in your life for sure. So that's pretty much me in a very short nutshell. If anybody does have any questions kind of brain related, I am generally very happy, although sometimes it takes me a couple of days to respond, but I am very happy to kind of give any information that I can for any of those sorts of questions without trying to make it too complicated. That is essentially what I teach at the university, is kind of how the brain works, but to early undergrad students, so without any sort of background. So, shall I jump into my story now, Lori?
Please jump into your story, because it is, it's a thriller, actually, in the end, Vicky. It's a thriller. I mean, it was grueling to get to where you got to, but just, you know, before Christmas, you were kicked out of the program. So that means you've been cancer-free for 5 years. Yeah. So, spoiler, I let people know the ending. But now it's your turn to take us on the journey.
Not the ending. It's still in progress, just not the cancer side. My life is.
That's true. That's true.
All right, so to just kind of start from the beginning of sort of my cancer journey, because it was cancer before getting introduced to Vox. So I was diagnosed in 2017, May, with a relatively rare form of breast cancer, although it's less rare than it used to be. Unfortunately, it is becoming more and more common, and it is the most common type of breast cancer in women under the age of 40, which is really not ideal because it is hard to treat, not a very good survival rate. If I had been diagnosed 10 years ago instead of 5, I might not have survived because they literally just didn't know how to actually treat it at all. So it's called triple negative. So most people know that there's the BRCA genes that are kind of involved with breast cancer a little bit. It's not as involved in the triple negative version of breast cancer because there's no hormone aspects at all to the triple negative form. So it also means that you can't use treatments that are hormone based in order to kind of keep the cancer at bay and prevent it from coming back. You literally are just at the whim of what your cancer cells decide to do in your body.
Wow.
So diagnosed at the age of 34, and then literally one day after my 35th birthday, happy birthday to me, I got to start chemo. It was not an amazingly fun time, I must say. I kind of wish that we had the peace patch at that point.
Yeah.
Diagnosis is a very, very terrifying thing, particularly when you're young, but I know at any age it definitely would be. And really just the stress of having a vague idea because of my medical background and my sister being a doctor. I had a bit of an idea what I was getting myself into, but I didn't actually know what I was going to get to experience for the next 18 months of my life. So I ended up having to have 15 IV chemotherapy treatments. Supposed to be 16, but I got sick, so they canceled one of them. And they were closer together than what is usual, even when you are trying to have that same sort of a treatment. It's some of the most powerful chemo that they give to anybody, no matter what type of cancer you're looking at. For the first few rounds, they were only 2 weeks apart, and they were literally one of the 2 drugs that they gave me in the same session, back to back, 2 different drugs. One of them, if you have your IV come out of the vein and it actually just kind of goes into your skin instead, then it pretty much mimics flesh-eating disease, and it will break down all of your muscles and your tissue and everything. So really not nice chemo treatments. For the most part, essentially the goal of the chemo is to hopefully not kill you while killing the cancer cells. But in a lot of cases, it does actually kill the person. So unfortunately, for some, it doesn't go so well. For me, it went all right. My team could not explain why I did as well as I did through all of my treatments, particularly the peace patch. Now it would have made more sense, but essentially I just made a decision that I didn't have the desire to die yet, so I was gonna fight it. And that's kind of one of the big things with cancer is you have to have an outlook of survival and that it is even possible, and not give in to the cancer, because otherwise your body just can kind of give up on you, and then it's not going to go overly well in lots of cases. So I was very happy and joking around in the chemo room while everyone else had their lights down low and they were just trying to sleep and things. I was the one up walking around and joking with the nurses and stuff. And I very much believe that that kind of mindset, and some people say personality, but at the time I generally was less of an optimist until I made the decision to be an optimist because of my cancer journey. So it kind of changed the way I looked at all of my treatments. So I didn't get nearly as sick as I was supposed to, which I still can't entirely explain, but the mind is a powerful thing. So I think it was partially just that I wasn't done with life. So I just kind of battled through everything and didn't let it get to me. I was still riding my horses on alternate weekends. I wasn't riding competitively or anything, but a couple of days after each chemo treatment, I didn't go to the barn, but I did go the kind of weekend in between and still tried to enjoy my life a little bit. Then after all of my lovely IV chemo treatments were finished, I did the 4 weeks of the first treatments that had 2 of the really nasty drugs, and then a slightly milder one for another 11 treatments that were weekly. Luckily, those ones don't make you nearly as sick, so it wasn't quite as bad. But the cancer started growing again during those treatments. So that was obviously a little bit scary. Didn't really know kind of where things go once the chemo isn't actually dealing with the cancer at that point. So the next step was get myself a little bit of an immune system back. So unfortunately, because I couldn't afford it, I'm single, don't have another income in my household, didn't have a whole bunch of savings because I had just a couple of years earlier finished my PhD and still have student debt from that. Then I had to go back to work, even working at the front desk of a medical office while I had no immune system. Not probably the best plan, but I managed not to get sick, so that was okay. Then I had to go for surgery, which was almost going to be delayed by a couple of weeks past Christmas, because they didn't actually have a spot for me, and they unfortunately ended up canceling someone else, but someone who was actually able to be on one of the treatments that can kind of keep the cancer at bay, because mine was growing and there is no treatment beyond the chemo and then radiation and trying to cut it out. So just before Christmas, like 4 days before Christmas, I had a double mastectomy. They got really good margins, which was awesome. So the entire tumor was gone, and it had also made its way into one of my lymph nodes in my armpit. And luckily that had a full chemotherapy effect. So that ended up that it had no more cancer cells in it. But of course, that meant there was technically a possibility that some cancer cells had gotten out beyond that lymph node and could be somewhere else in my body. So even though technically I'm considered to be cancer-free at that point, which is why I'm now at my 5-year mark, I got 2 of the, I would say joy, but not, of having both radiation treatments as well as chemo pills. And the annoying part for that is radiation treatments is daily, and I got to go first thing in the morning and then went to work afterwards because I still couldn't afford to not be working at that point. Lots of people get to be a full-time patient. I didn't have that luxury, not that it's a luxury, but it's easier to fight it if you get to be off and not trying to work at the same time. But because my cancer was so aggressive and it was also trying to still grow just before the surgery, then I actually ended up being in a sort of clinical trial where they gave me both the radiation and the chemo pills at the same time. Those chemo pills technically are supposed to make the radiation work even better against the cancer, but it also causes a really bad skin reaction. So I ended up with some of the most severe radiation burns that they have had at the Foothills Hospital. Not fun experience, I have to say, but luckily because of the surgery, I couldn't feel it. So I guess neuroscience for the win on that one. I had no nerve endings for the area that was burned, but then I had to go to home care every day for 5 weeks in order to actually get to that end point of the healing process. Continued on for another 8 months on the chemo pills. Luckily, they don't make you all that sick. They just have a reaction with your skin. So my hands and my feet essentially just kept trying to peel off, which was not so enjoyable either. But
Vicky, those pictures that you showed the women of Vox Life, when you say, oh, my skin's tried to peel off, the neuropathy is where we're going with this in terms of the Vox Life piece. But her feet, ladies and gentlemen, bordered on purple.
So did my hands,
in terms of the color. And yes, you've got the hand thing happening too. And I have a sister-in-law who's going through it right now. And both of those things are happening for her hands and her feet, and she's a dance teacher.
Oh, yeah.
So anyways, I don't suppose you're going to show us those pictures. I found them pretty graphic.
I didn't have them queued up.
No, don't worry about it, honey. We're just going to get to that piece where the Vox Tech took care of that.
Yeah, if anybody's interested in seeing those, I definitely can do that. And I can kind of show them privately. But I figured for kind of this group, then I wouldn't bother to show them. But yeah, my hands literally were just about purple for the palms. And my feet were a very, very deep, reddy kind of purple, and like callus thickness just kept peeling off continuously. As soon as it would start to heal itself, it would just start peeling off again, which is related to the neuropathy, but not directly connected. You can get neuropathy without having to have the dark color and the healing. Lots of people have the color change, but the peeling was because of the chemo pills, actually.
Okay.
Separate process. The neuropathy started because of the IV chemo, actually. So finally made it through all of those wonderful treatments, totaling just over a year and a half. It was actually, yeah, it was right around a year and a half, I guess. And at that point, I was technically considered to be cancer-free because there was kind of no new symptoms popping up or anything like that. But I definitely did still have a lot of healing to try and do. Obviously, chemo takes a huge toll on your body just overall, but then specifically, the biggest things I was experiencing were the neuropathy to start with, both hands and feet. Literally, it felt like I was walking on hot coals. Every single step was just excruciating. But there was nothing really to help me. So I just kind of suffered in silence. My family didn't even know how bad that neuropathy actually was. None of the pills that they had tried to give me were working, that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden, I had Debbie Brander come and talk to me. So she already knew me previously, but the way that she tells it is she was too scared to come and talk to me because she didn't know what to say about the magic socks because of my neuroscience PhD, and she had absolutely no idea how to explain the science, which is totally fine. You don't need to be able to explain the science, but she assumed that I was probably going to just tell her to go shove it because essentially magic, why the heck would I want to try that? So she finally was convinced by one of the other girls who worked at the medical clinic that I was at. And that girl also had started with Vox, didn't have anything nearly to the degree that I did, but she convinced Debbie to actually come and kind of do the little demo. So she did the balance demo on me over lunch hour, literally out front in our clinic. And I was, of course, blown away because she could essentially throw me across the room without the tech. I was not very good in terms of my balance, which was new because of the chemo. I actually had really good balance previously because I was, as a kid, I grew up doing trampoline and tumbling and Irish dancing. So I was extremely strong, a very strong core. But because of the chemo and I couldn't feel my feet, then it was pretty easy for her to kind of throw me around. And of course, I was lucky enough to be one of those wow experience people. So right away with the tech, she put me on the insoles and I was just solid. Didn't really think too much of it other than I was trying to figure out in my head how I could call bullshit. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. My neuroscience brain did not allow me to figure out what the heck could be going on here. And I am a very, very good example of how it is not just a placebo effect. So technically for some people, yes, it could be a placebo effect. If they believe it's going to work, even if it doesn't do anything, it could still do something because their brain can create sort of a reaction. But you cannot have a placebo effect if you are 100% sure it won't work. Your brain can't create an effect when it thinks nothing can happen. And I 100% thought nothing could possibly happen. So then I was curious, but still very, very skeptical. once the balance demo was done. And then Debbie decided to gift me a couple of pairs of socks. So she gave me a wellness and also a mini crew. And I immediately put the mini crew on. And while she was kind of demoing my sister, the doctor, as well as a few other people, including some of our patients who came in for their appointments at the end of the lunch hour, I started dancing around because my feet didn't hurt. So literally it only took about 30 seconds. And the tingling and the pain in my feet, that I already said, it was literally like walking on hot coals with every single step. It was literally 100% gone. So I was kind of jumping around a little bit and everyone's looking at me funny and wondering what the heck's going on. And when I ended up saying why, then of course everyone was blown away, and not everyone has that amazing reaction right away, of course, which at the time I didn't know. I assumed that everybody had this sort of a reaction, but nope, not even close. And then as they're still all kind of discussing a little bit more and she demoed an extra person, I looked at my hands and they were back to normal color. So it took about 3 minutes and my hands were completely normal colored from a very disturbingly deep purple kind of a color. And then because of that, we decided to also take a peek at my feet and they were pretty much back to normal color as well. So
like from a neuroscientist that knows there's no such thing as placebo. I mean, that's a takeaway in and of itself. Sorry, there is no such thing as placebo if you don't believe it can happen.
Yeah.
Those are two huge takeaways, because how many times have we all heard, oh, it's just placebo? And you, like, I don't think you can direct your feet and hands to have better circulation. I don't think that's a mind thing. Well, certainly not in that short of a period of time anyway.
It's not even fully a circulation thing for that, because the neuropathy is in that situation is actually damage to the nerve endings. So yes, there is a piece that is some circulation, but it's not just like when your feet get too cold, because they were normal temperature. They had fairly normal blood flow. It's just the nerve endings were so damaged that they were causing so much inflammation, which then caused a disruption to kind of the outer layers of my skin in those locations. And it was worse for whatever reason on the palms of my hands and the bottoms of my feet, which is the typical when you have that type of chemo and it kind of destroys the nerve endings in those areas. So
Vicky, the discoloration going to normal, I mean, it's you must have been like, blah, 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 blah.
I was dancing around. I had zero explanation. And I mean, one part of me, of course, was like, I don't care why. That's just
right.
amazing. It doesn't hurt and they look more normal and maybe everything will function a little bit better. But of course, the scientist in me wanted to know what the heck was going on and how that's possible. So my sister and I afterwards actually even went and I took off the socks again and we did the demo on each other, because we were thinking, well, maybe she pushed at a different angle, or like she was straight down, but she pulled towards her. Maybe she did something different, tried harder on one than the other and kind of cheated the system or whatever. And yeah, it still worked perfectly between my sister and I, being very, very careful, both as scientists, both very kinesthetically aware of ourselves. So my sister also started wearing the tech that day as well. She wasn't quite as consistent, but she had torn ACLs. And so there's a whole separate story about her experience and surgeons who were baffled by her results as well. But to kind of move forward with my story, I didn't sign up right away because I was just too confused as to what the heck was going on. But it was only a couple days later that I called Debbie back and I was like, okay, I got to be able to share this tech with other people. Like, this is just so amazing. I even got to the point where, because the technically the packaging still says you aren't supposed to put the socks in the dryer, right? So I only had one pair of daytime socks and one pair of nighttime socks. And I was lazy and didn't wash the nighttime socks early enough in the day. They were still wet, laying flat to dry. So I tried to go to sleep without them. And the tingle in my feet came back full force. It 30 seconds to come back at that point still. And then the tingling started spreading over my whole body and I could not fall asleep. I went and grabbed my wet wellness socks, put them on, and within about 2 minutes, I was asleep. Nasty wet socks. But the tingling went away again, and I could literally feel it recede from the top all the way down to my feet, and then it was gone again. So that just kind of solidified things to me about what effect I was going to have. And with long-term wear, literally couldn't go a day without it because 30 seconds to go away, 30 seconds to come back at first. Over the years now, I've gone through it would take about 10 or 15 minutes for it to really start again. Then I got to the tingling would come back within kind of an hour, but it would take almost 2 to 3 hours before the pain would actually start again. So
Wow.
even that, if I was desperate, it made a huge difference for my life and how I could function. Not that I ever planned on being without the socks, of course, but
Right. And Vicky, you tried the socks and were using the socks for a specific application, but that is not to say that other things were not happening in your body, as well as what it was doing for your neuropathy with the chemo. Like I would venture to say, and we don't diagnose, treat, or cure or claim to cure anything, but I know my own brother had concussion damage because of what we saw on his imaging with the brain mapping, and 9 months later there was no trace of that. So it's our tech is a facilitator, and our body is an amazing entity, but we have to help it, and that's where I think any little thing you can do to help the body along, be it rest, be it diet, be it whatever, this tech just amplifies what's happening as the body seeks to establish its own equilibrium. Yeah. And urology is the baseline. So
I definitely noticed that I did have some chemo brain. It wasn't nearly as bad as a lot of other people. But the first course that I was teaching while I was still on some of my treatments even, I definitely struggled with some word finding and things like that to do some of the more technical concepts that I was trying to teach about. But I definitely noticed after wearing, at least for probably a couple of months, that I wasn't having to word find nearly so much once I had the socks on. And because I immediately did go 24/7, because I mean, everything came back within 30 seconds. Why would I ever want to go out? So I definitely noticed that was a bit of a change. I still wasn't as severe as anybody else that I knew that had kind of been through similar treatments, but still compared to my previous, I was closer to my normal pre-cancer kind of brain.
Yep.
So I definitely noticed that sort of cognitive type of an effect. And then the other thing that was fairly substantial was to do with the healing process and the scarring from the radiation burns, but also the healing from the actual surgery itself. There was a lot of nerve damage, which was nice because I couldn't feel burning, but it then also meant that I had a lot of kind of skin area that I had absolutely no feeling in whatsoever. And normally that can take a good 18 months before it really starts coming back. And I started getting a fair bit of feeling back at about 6 to 8 months instead. So it definitely kind of sped up the healing process and regrowing those nerves. Because in your skin, you can regrow nerves. We all have experienced that if we cut ourselves, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But it is supposed to take quite a while for our body to be able to reconnect those nerve endings and give us proper feeling back. Sometimes it does it a little wonky and doesn't quite work perfectly, but I definitely noticed some interesting things that probably other people wouldn't have paid attention to because they wouldn't have known.
Right.
But one of the main things that I noticed was slowest to come back was actually being able to scratch an itch in that area. So I had feeling back and I had the tickle back, but I couldn't scratch the tickle. It was horrible. But I knew that that was only time before it would come back fully. And now there's still a small area that doesn't have quite full feeling, but I have almost complete feeling everywhere again, which apparently a lot of people don't ever get all of that feeling back with the same.
Well,
so that I heard.
And the variable would be the wearable neurotech in this equation, probably, or certainly would contribute to it. I'm really amazed the second time around because you tell it with such ease and composure, but you know, it could potentially be very triggering thing for you to talk about because, I mean, we've told your story inside of, 20 minutes or so, but just to think about your days and just, you're walking, you're sitting there and trying to be pleasant behind the desk of your sister's doctor's office and just having the grace to listen to Debbie talk to you about a pair of socks. Like,
magic.
Wow. I mean, I know that, if I get something between my teeth, I'm disgruntled all day. So like, hats off to you, Vicky. You're such a survivor. Some takeaways of mine from this particular rendition of your story is you made up your mind. You made up your mind, and that's a big thing, and especially good message going into 2023. You were going to give it your absolute best, and part of your absolute best, and probably the biggest part of your absolute best, was mindset. And so that's one of my big takeaways, the whole placebo thing. I think that is just fabulous to know. And, just the idea that it's a time thing. I mean, we forget that because we live in an instant gratification type society. And so, if it hasn't made major changes overnight, then we're all miserable. And so I think that's another important message to put out to our listeners is that, time and is a process certainly for the body, and any aids that we offer the body will expedite that healing, but just to stay with it, just to have the mindset to stay with it and to be open to learning and then consistent in and compliant in the wearing of this particular tech. There's a lot of people having weighing in the chat. What about fielding some questions, love?
Yes, I just had one more thing that I was wanting to touch on.
Please do.
A kind of an idea for anybody who is either experiencing it themselves or has a customer or a family member who has been diagnosed with cancer. Of course, like Lori said, we definitely don't kind of treat or diagnose or cure anything, but definitely there are a lot of different side effects to do with cancer and the chemo treatments that can benefit from the neurotech, from sleep to anything to do with your skin, like the neuropathy as well. And then also just the fatigue piece, anything where you can help to regulate your brain a little bit better. There's so many different things that those treatments are targeting that can be huge in terms of once they've started, if you can reduce the severity, but also keep in mind, if you can talk to people early enough in their kind of experience. I did share with a now friend of mine, didn't actually know her before my treatments at all. She was diagnosed about a year behind me, and I got the socks on her before she started chemo. And she had very, very similar treatments to me, and she didn't even develop any neuropathy because I got the socks beforehand. So there's technically a possibility that we might even be able to prevent some of those side effects. So obviously we can't guarantee that, but what does it hurt if you can just wear a pair of socks or a patch? Even more convenient with the patch.
Isn't that the truth? And coming from you, who has been to hell and back, that's saying an awful lot. And that's why we asked you to tell your story and are so grateful to you that you were willing to, because there is not very many of us that don't know someone or have not been touched ourselves with this disease. And
1 in 2
whatever,
Canadians in our lifetime.
is that a fact?
Yeah.
Wow.
At some point in your lifetime, 1 in 2 Canadians. So on the screen, look to your left, look to your right.
Yeah. Isn't that
You
amazing?
have it.
And
I'm glad I'm
we
in the
do
corner.
have. What was that, Terry?
I'm glad I'm in the corner.
And you're
Oh,
good
don't.
because I've already had it. And I'm on
Right.
my screen, I'm right beside you.
It's an incredible story, Vicky. Wow, so touching, and you're so brave through it. You know, you tell it with such courage and such bravery. And you know, I think that one of the points that really struck me is that Debbie Brander was afraid. You said that she had a fear of talking to you about it. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from me is don't be afraid to share something with somebody. Because like you said, what's it going to hurt? What's it going to hurt?
It would have done nothing to her if I had said, I don't believe you, I don't care, I'm not even willing to try it, right?
Mhm.
But she literally changed the course of my life because she was brave enough to.
And kudos to you for being open enough to with your educational background to be able to say, you know, not have that ego. I used to say some people with egos, you got to grease their temples to get them into the office. But you know, good for you for being able to be open to try this. So what was sort of the TSN turning point for you that made you decide that, hey, not only has this helped me and it's you know, got the squirrel on the wheel in my head going, what was sort of the turning point for you, Vicky, where you decided, I want to help, I want to share, I want to do what I can to teach this about this technology, educate people to the best of my ability, and hopefully return some of the life-giving qualities that you've experienced with our technology to somebody else. When was that moment for you?
So it happened pretty quick during the couple of days before I decided to sign up, because obviously my sister also tried the tech and all of a sudden her knees weren't as sore. So she didn't have the absolute amazing effect that I did, but still her being an academic and a doctor, then she very much was kind of skeptical, but also open to it and saw her own results fairly quickly. And I started thinking about all the different things that Debbie had kind of hinted at, of the different possibilities of what we could potentially help. And really the big thing was hundreds and hundreds of patients at the clinic. So many different things that this had the potential to change so many lives. And of course, in Canada, physicians aren't allowed to share the technology because they can't be perceived as making money off of their patients. It is Alberta Health that pays them, so they're not allowed to have any sort of a business that they can make money off of their patients in that way, particularly for something that is a potential health benefit. So what she would actually do is she would tell patients, okay, you need to go and talk to Vicky. She's going to tell you about something that might be able to help. So then I just started sharing it with different patients, some of them while they were sitting in the waiting room complaining about different aspects of what was going on with them or family members or things. And I mean, there's a fairly large crew of women in the Didsbury area that do share the technology between Debbie and Candy and Marvel.
Sure.
So there already was some experience in town, but there was still a lot of people coming to the clinic that had no experience with it. So it just started making me think about how many different things could possibly be affected, well beyond what was really being discussed at that point, because it was still fairly early in the technology, with a very small number of people on the testimonial page, that sort of thing. But just thinking of understanding the neuroscience potential of it.
Mm-hmm.
And literally the fact that it works on your brain, it is innumerable number of things that it could affect and improve quality of life by way of.
That's fantastic. So your focus wasn't necessarily on quasi a business. I'm sure you were aware that there was a stream of income that went along with this, but is it fair to say that the priority was to kind of return the favor, so to speak, to other people that it had given to you? So it was your focus, like a lot of ours on here have been from day one, was to help people, the mission to share this with a billion people. So that's really good. That's really good to hear, because I always believe that if you take care of people, the people that utilize it and grow will take care of you financially and mentally. Because I always said, you know, come and live in the joy zone. It's sort of hashtag joy zone. When you can help somebody and give them something that they don't really know how to repay you, it's a joy that you can't explain. And I think that's important for all the viewers on here to know that, you know, stay the course. You know, stay the course, continue to share, continue to be focused on truly helping people, and be brave enough to do it. That's another thing. So there's a couple questions here, Vicky. BJ is thanking you very much for sharing, and she said, "Did you use the socks? Did you use the socks, and what patches did you use?" I don't know if this is during, before, or after, or current. So maybe you can answer all three.
Sure. Yeah. So at first, the Harmony patch was still that really old, strange blue foamy thing.
Yeah.
So I didn't really use that because it had kind of just come out. Debbie used it as part of the demo. She didn't actually stick it on me. She just had me press it on my arm and hold it while she did the demo. But I really just started with the socks because that was pretty much all that we really had solidified in our inventory at the time. So for me, it was athletic during the daytime. I mostly did the no-shows, and then wellness at night. And then I also did the athletic knee highs to go in my riding boots, because it's wonders what can change with your horse's physical body as well when you're sitting correctly and more balanced and things too. So I made sure that kind of no matter what I was doing, I had some tech on me, mostly in the form of socks. I did also wear insoles, both in my kind of regular shoes, and then also I had some in my slippers and that sort of thing as well.
Right.
Not that you necessarily, I will say Jay's caveat, you don't necessarily get better neurology by adding more than one piece of the tech. So we all need to kind of be aware of that. But my opinion on that was kind of course, that's true if you get to kind of 100% again. But if one set of tech only gets you to 60%, what if another one could get you to 80? What does it hurt? So I decided to try. And early on, I definitely did feel that I had a little bit more of kind of the heat sensation still in my feet if I didn't stack both the socks and the insole.
Okay.
That could have all been in my head, who knows? But that was my experience. So I decided, why not? I have them. So I did kind of combine those two techs together. And then it wasn't until more recently that I started trying to do, I started with the Harmony patch a little bit, but I'm one of the people that found that the Harmony patch did not provide the same effect as the socks and insoles did. So some people have full effect with the patch, some people don't. I feel like it's probably more likely with the Liberty that people are going to actually have the full effect because it is improved over the original Harmony pattern. So that's kind of more of a potential option there. But for me, it definitely didn't seem to do as well. I think some of that is because of how damaged my feet were by drawing my brain's attention just to my feet. That made a huge difference having the pattern on my feet, not somewhere else on my body. But I also had damage in a whole bunch of different places. I had a torn rotator cuff and all kinds of other fun things going on with my body as well. So the patch didn't seem to give me at least the foot portion. It probably did a lot of other things, but it didn't give me the foot
Well,
relief.
you know, I think it's, you know how we all feel when you get a really nice hug? I feel like the socks give your foot a hug sometimes. And so, you know, they're doing what they're doing neurologically, I believe, but you know, there's a lot of people that like to have their foot rubbed or squeezed or whatever. And our athletic socks with that arch support and everything, it's like, to me, like giving your foot a hug. So the physical sensation that I receive from the socks is superior to the patch. However, I'm sure that the neurological balance, homeostasis that I'm receiving from the patch is, you know, equal to the socks. And I certainly am a huge patch wearer in the summertime because I'm, you know, when it's hot, nobody really likes to wear socks. So, you know, flip flops and so on. So, you know,
Even put
definitely
Bellas in
you fit
my,
it to your lifestyle.
yeah. I even ended up that I put some bellows into my Birkenstocks so that I could wear sandals for the summer.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I did the same with flip flops too. Double-sided taped them in my flip flops.
I Velcroed so I can move them from one to the other.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, and Heather Lemke says, were you able to wear the socks, Vicky, full time immediately, or did you have to introduce them gradually?
I luckily could wear them literally right away. Yeah, my brain just happily accepted them. I didn't have anything else neurologically going on, really. So literally from day one, I just wear the athletic during the day and the wellness at night. I hated socks at night
Yeah.
because of the thermoregulation piece that the socks can help with as well. Then I didn't overheat. And I just, because of the ability to sleep and the relief that it gave from the neuropathy, then my brain kind of overpowered the desire that I had to take off socks when I was sleeping. So yeah,
Well,
right away I did wear them full time.
yeah.
I didn't have to build up or anything like that. So I was lucky on that.
Well, your story is very compelling, and I know that Karen Smith, a friend of all of us, a friend of a lot of us on here, she's also a cancer survivor, and she says that she would never be without the tech. And you know, I think we're, you know, we all have a duty now to share this. I mean, when we've had and seen so many amazing things, and we see what we see on our testimonials group, and we see the stories and what our technology has been able to do, and as you said, we're not treating, diagnosing, or curing anything, but it's about quality of life. It's about, you know, how we cope with the issues that we all have, and not everybody has the same two issues. We may have similar issues, as you said, and the tech will support you in your battles, and will support me in my battles to a degree that I wouldn't get. And I'm so thankful that it's here, because quality of life is important in a world that seems to be getting filthier with foods and you name it, on and on and on. So,
well, and particularly now with the new super patches, the fact that we have kind of improved version of the original tech in the Liberty/Victory,
yeah.
but now that we can add more targeted relief for things like the stress and anxiety with the peace patch, the flow and the focus for more cognitive types of issues, then you can almost kind of supercharge the original tech, which has so much ability to still help people. But
Sure.
now we can add that extra component on to help with even more of kind of the very common specific types of issues, whether you've got some sort of a health challenge like a cancer journey and the side effects that go with that, or just other things like depression and anxiety, those sorts of things. There's so much that we can now support people in so many different ways that we can really improve quality of life to even a greater degree than we ever could with just the socks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, being able to target specific pathways with our super patches is pretty exciting, because I know that we've had some great stories so far that, you know, specifically happen with just a patch, whether it's the pain patch, whether it's the focus patch, whether it's whatever. And it's exciting to be able to have those options. Now we all just have to be students of the neurology and students of the patches understand and learn from each other, which learning from you tonight and through your experiences has been absolutely wonderful. And Karen says, I find the tech also helps keep a positive mindset, which is very important in a cancer recovery journey or any health journey for that matter. So I know that for sure the Peace Patch has been tremendous for a lot of those that have switched from the, maybe the sleeve, wearing the Peace Patch and the Focus patch as well. But I think there's many good things to come, and I'm so grateful on behalf of my sister Lori and I know Paul Austin is on here, another one of our teammates and leaders. We're grateful that you have come on here and been open to share and offered, any questions that people may have, that they could reach out to you and speak to you or whatever. And I look forward to hearing more as your journey continues. And
oh yeah, I have several more things. I've had spine surgery and all kinds of stuff since as well. So there's several more facets to my story.
I'm sure you're not bionic, right? So no, that's wonderful. So Lori, I'll let you cap off, if you will, and say a couple words, and then we'll respect everybody's time. It is on the hour now, and so we want to be a respecter of everybody's time. So if you could unmute, Laura. You have to unmute, Laura.
There we go. Fighting my phone. Yeah, I think what we should remember is the last comment in the or the second to last comment. I think Paul Van der Veen makes a really good point, and we were on this point just prior to me getting the mic. A combination of patches. Terry, you said become a student of the the technology. And Dr. Sylvia alluded to this at her presentation. She talked about combining patches, and Paul's saying that a friend of hers, having gone through a cancer journey recently, wore the Defend patch, and the doctors were amazed at her blood counts. So that's something too to bear in mind, is the combination of peace and sleep. If the REM patch isn't working solely on its own, the people's conditions are specific sometimes, and so we can start with a general application, but I think we as associates have to become informed, at least with people's experiences, if nothing else. Dr. Sylvia recommends that athletes train with the Liberty patch and then pop on the Victory patch for game time. And the reason that she advised this was because of her own situation, wherein she was operating her clinic all day, and then she'd get a call because she was declared an essential worker and working at some local hospitals. She said the Victory patch went on so that she could put her thrusters on and go into overdrive and finish out her day with the alertness that is required of a medical professional. So, and the peace and the sleep patch combination works brilliantly well for people who tend to ruminate when they go to sleep, So there is the possibility of combining the patches, and the Defend is absolutely outstanding for our immune systems, combined with whatever else we decide, we need specific help in.
For the most part, just about everybody should have either the Socks or the Liberty and the Defend. And then whatever your symptoms beyond that, if you should wear extras, that would be kind of the gravy.
Yes.
But for just about literally every person on the planet, we should probably have the basic form of the tech and the Defend on at all times.
Especially in these days. Vicky, you're an absolute treat. Thank you very much for your share and your positivity and your insight. We're all blessed by you, and let's all keep doing the do, and let's keep coming back on Monday nights to do what Terry suggested, and that is expand our knowledge so that we can be better helpers of the world out there that needs our help.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Vicky, on behalf of the team. We're all a team. And
Thanks for having me.
there's no I in team, and we're all grateful to have you here. And anybody out there, look forward to seeing you on Saturday if you're coming to the event. If not, we'll wave on the Zoom or whatever we have to do if you're on the Zoom. But don't forget to jump on the Zoom. And thank you all for taking the time out of your schedules tonight to learn and engage in this team. We certainly appreciate it, and we will continue. Myself, Lori, you guys, anybody out there that has suggestions on something you want to, either talk on or teach on, or that you think will bring value to the team, we're open. This is not my call, Lori's call, or Paul's call. This is our team's call. And so if you want to teach, you got something that you want to add value, please reach out. We want to schedule 2 months in advance. So if you got a date that works for you, please reach out. We'd love to have you. So God bless. Good night, everybody. And we look forward to
Thank
seeing
you all
you.
your comments. Thank you, Paul Van Veen, for your comments.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye,
Good
everybody.
night.
Love you all.
Thanks for being here.
Good, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Vicky.